Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Change Your Mind podcast. I'm your host, Chris Ashley. We explore personal development, spirituality, and science. We're going to get heavy into the personal development and science side today. So I'm really excited. We're going to talk about nutrition and how pain has an emotional component and self-care and all of the things that you've heard me talk about that is in my book and is totally in line with the show. So I think you're going to really like this episode. First, couple quick announcements. Head over to the links in my show notes. You're going to find a lot there. You'll find links for my amazing guest, of course. You'll also find a link to my book, Change Your Mind to Change Your Reality. It's available in paper book, ebook, audiobook, from everywhere you buy your books. It was endorsed by Bob Doyle, Marcy Shimoff, Michael Beckwith, all of whom you might have seen on The Secret. It's endorsed by John Gray, who wrote Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus, Anita Moorjani, who wrote Dying to Be Me, and a whole host of others. You'll also find links to my free masterclass, to my courses, to free downloads. Just head over there, get connected, lots of social media links as well. And as always, this podcast is a part of the Los Angeles Tribune Podcast Network. We are doing some big things in personal development. I'm about to fly down to LA in a month to co-host and be on a panel and just get involved with us. Lots of other amazing podcasts as well. All right. So with me, Jen, how do you pronounce your last name? I totally didn't ask you.
No problem. It's Jen Uschold.
All right. So with me, I have Jen Uschold. So Jen grew up in Western New York and has been a PT for over 3 decades. She has worked in multiple treatment environments, including travel PT. Out of her love for PT and helping others to empower themselves, she was drawn in both pain science and health coaching. She has completed a fellowship in pain science with evidence in motion. Jen is an eager learner and has also studied lifestyle medicine and positive intelligence. Jen is most passionate about bringing a blend of pain science and positive intelligence to the world. So welcome, Jen. I'm glad you're here.
Thank you. I'm very excited to be here.
All right. So I start every single episode the same way, and that is by asking my guests to tell their origin story. So what is it that made you want to go into pain science? And what is it especially that made you realize that it's connected with our emotions and wanted to focus on the mindset piece?
That's such a good question. And I have been very fortunate to be exposed and mentored by really great minds in physical therapy and health related fields. And I don't really feel like I sought these things out. I feel like they found me. Like I did, my first deep dive was into functional manual therapy, and that was a literal advertisement on the wall in my first hospital. And then I still am involved with that group. And that was back in 1991. And then I got involved with pain science. I have no idea. I found this email of this guy named Adrian Lowe, who happens to be one of the gods of pain science. I sent him an email. I was having trouble with a client, and he responded. And then he said, "Do you want to do some research with me?" And I was like, "No, yes, no," because I was scared to death. And then that was what started it. So not only is he my pain science mentor, he's also kind of my boss now because I teach with that company, Evidence in Motion. And then how did I get drawn to lifestyle medicine? Well, after I completed the fellowship, they asked me, they said, "Would you be willing to be the program director for this online program teaching clinicians about lifestyle medicine?" It was a perfect fit with what I was already passionate about. And even though I was practicing lifestyle medicine, the term itself was new. And then my latest passion is the positive intelligence. And that was really interesting too, because I'm in a coaching Facebook group and somebody said, "Hey, do you want to be in this pod with me?" And honestly, I was a little skeptical of the phrase positive intelligence because I get concerned about toxic positivity in the world. And I listened to the intro video and I was hooked. And that was over 2 years ago. And I am still very heavily involved with positive intelligence. So I didn't seek these things out, they found me.
Yeah, it sounds like it was your mission, your purpose in life. So talk to me a little bit about what evidence in motion and what positive intelligence is, because I haven't heard of either of those things.
Evidence in Motion is a large provider of continuing education. They started out just as for physical therapists, but now they have a bunch of programs for pretty much any allied health professional. And so that's where I had my pain science training, and that's where I am program director for the lifestyle medicine. Positive Intelligence is a company that they very quickly got onto that top 500 Fortune 500 list, which is pretty impressive. And Positive Intelligence, I describe it as harnessing your brain to be your friend more often than your enemy. And I just was working with a 9-year-old earlier today, and we were just talking about the ticker tape of your mind with CNN. That didn't make sense to her as a 9-year-old. So there's something in her school where they're field days. So there's people everywhere. There's screaming, there's lights, there's games, there's, chaos and fighting. And she's like, yes, that's what it's like when I go to sleep at night. So we did a couple of these positive intelligence or mental fitness exercises. And now she has some strategies to help her to go to sleep tonight. So learning this process of how we shift our brain and the neuroscience of it, and then the practicality of it, that's what PQ is. And that's my mission, to bring pain science and PQ to the world.
Awesome. Well, I would love for you to share one of those exercises and explain how to make your brain your best friend. What is it? How do we do it?
Love it. So, very broadly, we can say that negative emotions are on the left side of our brain, if we're just really going to generalize, and we can say positive emotions are on the right side of our brain. Positive emotions, the ability to be empathic, the ability to be creative and innovative, the ability to be reflective, and even just taking hardcore action. And so, if you would like to go through a PQ, we call it a PQ exercise, we can do that. And I will close my eyes. I invite you to close your eyes if you want to, and we'll take maybe 1 to 2 minutes. Is that an okay time frame?
Yeah, it's great. Let's do it.
Okay, great. All right, so I'll invite you to close your eyes. And if your audience would like to join us, that would be amazing. And sit with your back supported and your feet on the ground. And start by experiencing the weight of your body in your seat. And often we have thoughts and emotions that come into our mind. This is okay. Just come back to the physical sensation of weight. And now feel the weight of your feet on the floor. See if you can identify all 10 of your toes and wiggle them if that's helpful. Now we're going to shift to hearing PQs. What is the furthest away sound that you can hear in your environment? And what is the closest sound that you can hear? And again, if you have a thought or an emotion come into your mind, just come back to the sensation of sound. And can you hear your own breathing? Take your hands and rub them near your ears so that you can hear the sounds of your hands rubbing against each other. And now take 2 fingers and rub them together with such intention that you can feel the ridges on each fingertip. And then when you're ready, you can open your eyes. What was that like?
Thank you so much. It reminded me a little bit of a Joe Dispenza meditation in the beginning where you're focusing on certain senses. So your mind just completely empties, right? Or I don't know. I ran a yoga studio and we would run yoga teacher training. So it's like focusing on that flame or a mantra, right? It's just very focused.
Right. So when we focus on a physical sensation, we are literally shifting what part of our brain we're accessing. And so we cannot be in that fight or flight place if we are focusing on a physical sensation, because then we are in the right side of our brain. It's very fun because we have so much pain science that's supported by fMRI brain scans. But the same is true when people do these mental fitness exercises. We see the shift in their brain. Lots of similarities with mindfulness and meditation. The cool difference is, we can take 10 seconds sitting at a red light and, bring ourselves back to a more basic ground if we're a little elevated. So it's super fun. It's super easy, super accessible.
It's really fascinating. It reminds me a little bit, like I did a lot of research for a chapter of my book about how pain is tied to our emotions. And it reminds me about how pain scientists actually say that like when you focus on other things, your brain suppresses the pain,
Yeah.
right? Is it kind of along those lines?
This is so cool that you have this background. Pain is based on the level of real or perceived threat. And so if your brain is perceiving a big threat, you will have pain. And it actually, those are correlated. The higher the threat, real or perceived, the more pain you will have. And so distraction is a legit strategy for people experiencing pain. So if we can pull them away, now their brain is focused on the chess game or going for a walk or reading a book to their kid, and no longer is it perceiving that threat of their shoulder or their back. So it's more about when we lessen the threat, then the brain is no longer worried about you. And if the brain isn't worried about you, it's not going to create a pain experience.
That's really interesting. So I guess it's a good time to just talk a little bit about pain science. Can you just give us a little bit of an overview so everyone's kind of on the same page here?
Yeah, thank you. Happy to do that. Pain science is helping people overcome chronic pain, and it doesn't even necessarily be tied. It's not necessarily tied to a particular amount of time. There's different definitions within that, but the focus is we are using non-pharmacological, non-surgical, and no injections. It doesn't mean that we don't use those things. It's that we want to try these things first. And we have so much amazing evidence supporting that when people learn about pain, they have less pain. And when they learn the strategies, then they have even less pain and they have more function. And I always say the goal is for them to fire me.
I love that. And what a difference between Western medical doctors, right? Where the goal is to keep you coming back. One of the people who I studied that I just really like his approach, and you reminded me a little bit, is Johnny Sarnos, and he wrote the Mind Body Prescription. I'm sure you are familiar, but he was saying that like sometimes in his seminars, all he has to do is explain the connection between repressed emotions and pain, and like half the audience's pain just disappears. And it's just like you said, it's like educating people completely can change their experience.
Yeah.
Think about
Okay. Do
that.
you know him? You called him Johnny Sarno. Do you know him?
No, John E. Sarnos.
Oh,
Yeah.
John
Oh
Sarno.
gosh, I wish I did.
Wow. Because I actually had a client, because he's from New York, and I had a client many years ago, and I started talking to her, and she's like, "Yeah, he was my family physician when I lived in New York." And I was like, "Get out." So that was very interesting.
Cool. That's super cool.
Yeah. Okay. So this is a really good topic also because, yes, repressed emotions can be a big piece of pain. However, it's not the whole picture.
Mhm.
And I had a client once who she was seeing a counselor for $575 an hour who said, until you know that your pain is due to repressed emotions, you're never going to get better. And her response to me was, I know exactly what happened to me. I don't want to be reliving this anymore. So, as much as that is super valid and helpful for some people, we still need to remember pain is also a lot of biology, it's a lot of our environment and our beliefs. And sometimes it's largely due to repressed emotions, but it doesn't have to be.
Totally. And I appreciate that because I think we were saying before the show, I think repressed emotions almost always lead to pain, but pain isn't always caused by repressed emotions. But you said something really interesting. You said beliefs. And just talk to me about that, and then I'll do a follow up.
Yeah. So we have this thing called a mature organism model where, just broadly, your nervous system gets input from your tissues, your body, your joints, etc., as well as the environment. But then the brain has to do something with it. And one of the things it's considering is, what are our beliefs about pain? Kids are a super easy example. If we take a 5-year-old and they fall on the ground, a lot of times there's no reaction until they look to see who's watching. And if their first eye contact with mom or dad, and mom and dad have this look of horror on their face, that kid's probably going to start crying. If mom and dad have a smile or an encouraging hand to help them up, that is going to influence their pain experience. And so when we say our beliefs matter, they really do. So if you have a belief that I cannot start running again until I have zero pain, this is going to really limit your ability to get back into any function. And people have many different beliefs. One of the biggest myths we have is that all pain is due to tissue damage. We can have a ton of tissue damage and horribly ugly looking scans and have no pain. And the opposite is also true. We can have a ton of pain and have beautiful scans. If you and I went to the grocery store, what's your favorite grocery store?
Probably Whole Foods.
Whole Foods. If you and I went to Whole Foods and we just pulled a random 10 people out, and you and I are rich right now, and we just toss them into an MRI scanner, 4 of them will have positive findings, herniated discs, bulging discs, and no pain. So this is why beliefs matter.
I really resonate with everything that you're talking about. Just like personally, my mother has chronic pain, and she is one of those people who really puts a lot of stake in what Western medical doctors say. And, my husband and I joke that like she loves getting surgeries, and she just got a shoulder replacement like 3 months ago, literally 3 months ago. And that was just her latest surgery. And she told me that she needed two. One of her shoulders was hurting really bad, and she got a scan on both, and the other shoulder had like way more damage to it, but it didn't hurt her. But she decided to get the replacement on that shoulder. And to me, that just like blows my mind, right? It's like, and I think I totally agree. Like you said, like if you go digging for something, you're going to find something. Like they even say that we always have cancer cells in our body, but our immune system gets rid of them, right? Like a healthy immune system.
And you
So
do a lot with lifestyle, and that kind of introduces a slight shift, is epigenetics. Do you talk much about epigenetics?
I love geeking out about epigenetics. Please go down that rabbit hole.
Yeah, you probably could geek out more than me. But what I love about it is, depending on whatever the research is you read, 80 to 90%, depending on the research, it has nothing to do with your actual DNA. Your lifestyle choices are going to influence whether or not that gene shows up. So I totally believe you that we all have cancer cells in our body. But the cool thing is, we get the choice of, are we going to create an environment where they're going to foster and facilitate, or are we going to create an environment where they stay damped down and quiet? So yeah, I love that.
Exactly. You know what else this is making me think of is when people are told that they have a terminal illness and they have X number of months to live, if they believe the doctors, they usually go within that amount of time. But it's the people that are like, I'm not going to buy into that, are the ones that have those quote unquote spontaneous healings. It's just all so fascinating how our mind is so powerful.
It is. I wish I could remember the book, but the story is quick enough. Is that there was somebody who was terminal, and we'll just say that Jen was terminal and Tom was not terminal, but the doctors flipped it. So they told Tom that he was terminal, and they told Jen that she wasn't. Guess what? Jen did fine, and Tom ended up dying because he had gotten that. That's exactly what you're saying. It is powerful. Yeah, absolutely.
That gave me goosebumps.
Crazy.
So, okay. So back to belief systems. Have you noticed also that people with certain personality types, or people who tend to get stressed more or deal with other things in their life in certain ways, have more chronic pain than others?
How much time do you have? so, so we do have research that different cultures have different responses to pain. So the Japanese culture tends to have a more stoic response. The Mexican culture, they tend to be much more expressive. Does that mean one of them has more or less pain, or that it's more or less real? Absolutely not. It's just that's the influence of environment and culture. And now I'm trying to remember the other things you said, because there were so many different avenues I wanted to go.
Personality type. I mean, even people who are like type A versus, something else, like that, yeah, chronic pain.
Yeah, so personality type absolutely can. And this is where the work of positive intelligence comes in. Positive intelligence, we have like 10 broad categories of how these negative patterns can show up. Is it someone who is a controller? Is it someone who tends to be pleasing? And those are personality types. And what I like about positive intelligence is that whatever our strongest saboteur is, or that controller, it actually represents our greatest strength that's gone a little bit overboard. And the same is true with pain. Pain is protective, it's wonderful, it's necessary. And those who have chronic pain, their system is doing its job too well. And so, yes, personality can drive pain. It's not the personality so much, it's more the overboard aspect of the personality. How do we get that person with strong controlling tendencies use that to their benefit? And that calms their nervous system and will likely calm their pain as well.
That makes sense, especially that last part you said about calming their nervous system, right? Like, I think the thing that blew my mind when I first learned it is that pain doesn't even originate in the body part that's hurt, right? It's your nervous system and your brain. So it makes sense that if they're so wired tightly and controlling, that would kind of put them in a sympathetic nervous state, right? And then that
Yeah.
kind of filters down. Yeah, that's really interesting.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, because a lot of people think that we have pain nerves and we have pain sensors, and we don't. That moment you step on a nail, it's not pain yet. And it might not be pain. So think about, if you step on a nail and you're in your backyard, you're going to feel it. If you step on a nail when you are running away from a dog that's chasing you, there's no value. That doesn't help you stay alive. And so your brain is going to be like, we're going to pause that. And then once you get away from the dog, then your brain will be like, okay, we'd really like you to take care of that nail in your foot now. So that helps people understand how it's less about the body part and more about the perception of threat.
That totally makes sense. And also that example you gave earlier with a kid, it's like they don't react until the parents react, right? So, I have a 7-month-old, and it's like I've been steeped in parenting books, and it's like everything is like, don't like run over and make a big deal out of it, for
Yeah.
that exact reason. Okay,
Oh,
so
can I counter that for a moment? I'm not going
yeah,
to
yeah,
counter, but I'm going to add to that. So we don't want to overreact to what they're experiencing, and we want to find that place of connection and compassion so that they still
totally.
feel heard, because we have those opposite parents as well. There's like the militant, get up, you're fine. And
Yeah,
that always bothers me when people tell a kid who's in pain that they're fine. I'm like, they'll be fine. Right now, they're not fine. So let's connect with them where they are and help them feel safe and confident that they know what to do to get to fine.
totally. Yeah, thanks for adding that in for sure. I totally agree. Okay, so if our beliefs drive our pain, how do we change our beliefs around pain so that we don't have chronic pain anymore?
Loaded question. Our beliefs are one component of our pain experiences. We can't discount the environment, we can't discount what's going on with our body. And so, how do we shift our beliefs? Is it takes first someone who's willing to be curious. So, if somebody comes into me and they are 100% certain that they have pain because they have arthritis and they need surgery, and there's no room for discussion, my work isn't going to help them. If they are curious and say, you know what? I have heard of people who've had arthritis and they don't have pain. Why is that? This opens the door to start to introduce concepts. And that is when we start to shift beliefs. And when they understand pain, then they know what to do about it. Most people don't actually know the definition of pain. I ask people when I'm teaching, I ask my clients, we know what pain feels like, but we don't really know what it is. So, how can we expect somebody to successfully overcome pain when they don't know what they're dealing with? It's a little bit like if you or I were to suddenly become a tax accountant, or if we were going to become a cardiothoracic surgeon, that wouldn't go very well because we don't have any knowledge. So we're asking people to be successful when they don't yet have the knowledge and skills to create that path of success.
Totally. Do you think that whatever you believe will cure you is what could possibly cure you?
What's that Henry Ford quote? Whether you believe you can or you cannot, you're right.
Yeah.
There's also a very cool book. Have you heard of it by Bruce Lipton, The Biology of Belief?
Yeah, I love that one.
Yeah. So again, it's pieces. If there's one message that I really want people to understand, is that it is not one thing that got you here, and it's not going to be one thing that gets you out. So if shifting your beliefs gives us a 30% head start, awesome. If changing your nutrition gives us another 5%, fabulous. We work on your sleep and we work on your exercise, we get another 12%, 18%. It's piecing it together because there's so many contributing factors for each person. This is my new fun fact. Do you know Lorimer Mosley?
I don't think so.
He's one of the pain science gods, and he's in Australia. He's got this new book out, can't even remember the name. But how many pieces of information do you think your brain processes every single second?
Oh, like trillions. Yeah.
Okay, it's only 11 million, but that is still a
Okay.
staggering number. I extrapolated it out for in an hour, it's a lot of zeros. And so every second, your brain is having to filter 11 million pieces of information, and its main job is to keep you safe. So sometimes when it's not quite sure, it's always going to choose the more conservative option because its job is to keep you safe. So then it's our job to help the brain realize, you know what, we are safe. Picking up a pen off the ground is not a need for our back to hurt significantly.
Yeah, I like that you started to talk about these other pieces, because one of the things you told me is that you can help treat and even reverse up to 80% of lifestyle related diseases with all of these pieces, right? With mindset, with sleep, with nutrition. So talk to me about the rest of those. What are the other contributing pieces?
Yeah, so that is broadly called lifestyle medicine. And that is there's 6 gears. Let's see if I can get them all: sleep, exercise, nutrition, stress management, avoiding risky substances, and social connections. And it's really fascinating how the research has shown that when we do these things, we not only can prevent, but also treat and reverse. And there's what's it called? Revenge is the best medicine. That's the name of the study, which I think is a great name for a study. And if you do even one or two of these choices, of these lifestyle choices, you improve your health. The more you do, the more benefit you get. So I like it because it puts us in control. I like it because it doesn't have side effects. I like it because it's really accessible to all of us. You know, exercise is accessible. Choosing not to drink alcohol is accessible. So that's why I really like it.
Yeah, absolutely. And it like goes back to like how humans are meant to live, right? We're not meant to live isolated, sitting all day under blue lights,
Exactly.
eating a bunch of junk food.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, agree.
Okay, so if we could do like a fast breakdown of each of those, is there a recommendation? And I'm sure it goes like person to person, but is there like a general recommendation for exercise, for nutrition, for social connection, so that people listening can take a little bit away for them?
That's a good question. Okay. Am I talking about somebody in their health, or are we going to incorporate somebody who has chronic pain along with these gears?
Let's go middle of the road. Maybe someone who has a little bit of issues, but they're not like bedridden, right? They're not
Okay.
They haven't gone the total Western medicine, lots of pills, lots of surgery route. They're curious.
Okay. Let's start with exercise. So, exercise is for everyone. Some people are very opposed to exercise. So, sure, let's shift it out with movement. Can doing the dishes and going up and down the stairs, taking your laundry be exercise? Absolutely. Yes, we have the recommendation of 30 minutes a day, 5 times a week. But my recommendation for everyone is start where you are. I have literally had clients who started with 1 or 2 minutes. They were not bedridden, but that's where they were ready to start. So that's my biggest thing with exercise is find a way to move your body that you enjoy, that feels good, and meet yourself where you are. So that's exercise. Any questions on that? Is that a good one?
Yeah, I mean that's totally a great place. And then for someone who is healthy, like what is your recommendation? Like are you like go for walks? Or are you like lift weights or are you like do yoga or is it really just whatever makes you happy and will make you continue doing it?
Yeah, so from the health standpoint, we do want a mix of weight training and weight bearing and cardiovascular exercise. We do to maximize our health. From the pain science side, I honestly tell my clients, I don't care what you do. Let's get your body moving. And then as they get stronger, you want to be a runner? Let's go. You want to be rowing? You want to be doing dance lessons? Whatever it is they want to do, we can start to incorporate that. But that broader picture of combining those three weight bearing, weight training, and cardiovascular is important.
Awesome. Okay. Cool.
Okay.
On to the next.
Nutrition. I find it fascinating and also frustrating because there's a lot of dogma out there and a lot of preachy people. So, generally, what we can all agree on is limit sugars, avoid processed food, eat as clean as possible. That's a very good basic starting point for anyone. And then it can get really murky from there. So, we'll leave nutrition at that. Let's see, avoiding risky substances. This includes, hard drugs, alcohol, tobacco, marijuana, all those things. And it's interesting because we have been watching the trend of alcohol. Drink red wine. It's okay to do this. Well, the stance is changing. We are now recommending no alcohol as the best approach. Does that mean if you have a beer once a week or a glass of wine? No. It's just that in terms of your starting point, can you shift to a little bit less? And then can you shift to less again? And sure, go ahead and have one now and again. And I also, when I teach in person, we'll do an improv game because I also take improv classes. And what can we do instead of drinking at a social event? So that's always fun to see what people come up with. All right, avoiding risky substances, exercise, nutrition, sleep. I'm just going to say sleep is not a luxury. Sleep is essential. It is actually where children grow. It is where we have memories go from short term to long term. And it's fascinating because the research shows that the quality of our sleep impacts pain more than the pain impacting our sleep, which still blows my mind. But I just came from a conference earlier in the summer, and it's the quality of the sleep that is important for helping with pain. So that's sleep.
Well,
Um,
so just can I jump in? So what's the recommended hours of sleep a night?
Generally 7 to 9, but there's flexibility within that. Have you read Matthew Walker's book, Why We Sleep?
No. I'm gonna
Ooh.
write it down though.
Oh, it's a really good one. I like that one. And one of the statistics he quotes, which blows my mind, is that in the fall, when we gain that extra hour of sleep, the Monday after, it's 22 or 24% reduction in heart attacks in the ER. And then in the spring, it's a 22, I always forget which one, 22 to 24% increase in heart attacks when we lose that hour of sleep. That's how important sleep is.
Yeah, I've heard that statistic too, and it blew my mind as well. And it's like, why do we still have freaking daylight savings time?
Oh, it's crazy. Yeah.
I think like travel too affects it a lot with the time zones. And then I think of someone like Tony Robbins who travels every 4 days. I'm like, dude, no wonder he biohacks like crazy just to keep going, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a whole nother category of health. Yeah. Okay, I think we have sleep and social connections. No, we don't. We have stress and social connections left. So in terms of stress, stress is connected to inflammation. Poor nutrition is connected to inflammation. And honestly, pain and inflammation go together. So the more we can ease our inflammation through doing all of these other avenues, including stress reduction, the better off we're going to be. And that's exactly what meditation and mindfulness are. That's exactly what mental fitness or positive intelligence is. It's just in a manner that's in smaller bites than it is with the mindfulness and meditation.
So let's talk about those smaller bites. I've heard a statistic that even spending 15 minutes a day bringing yourself into a parasympathetic state is enough to like counter all of the stress. Like, is that true? Is that real? Is that some weird thing I saw on social media? Like, what is the recommended amount to just bring yourself out of that stressful state?
I am not familiar with that statistic.
Yeah,
My
it could be
answer
total
to
bullshit. I don't know.
I don't know. It might not be because I don't have any knowledge of it. What I will say though is it depends on your state. So if you are this close to your threshold all day, every day, you're going to need to spend a lot of time coming back down here. Now, if
Mhm.
you're running here and then once in a while you go up here, well, then it's going to take less work. Are you familiar with neuroplasticity in your world?
Yeah, but please talk about it.
Okay, so neuroplasticity is that we truly can change the patterns and the pathways in our brain. That is what we are doing with pain science is we are creating new pathways. This is what we're doing with mental fitness. We're creating new pathways. And the example I use with clients and when I teach is imagine if we've got a superhighway and that's the easiest road to get from point A to point B. Now, if we need to create a new pathway that's better and healthier, and we're starting in a grassy field, we're going to have to go over that grassy field over and over and over again so that that becomes the preferred path as opposed to that superhighway. And so the key here is less about a chunk of time and more about a little bit frequently throughout the day. Because the more time we spend in that state of calm, that becomes the norm. Versus you do it 15 minutes in the morning, well, then you've got the whole day to be in that state of being hijacked. And so that is a base aspect for both pain science and the mental fitness.
I love that metaphor. Yeah, thank you for that. And it totally makes sense, right? Like like you said, like you could spend 15 minutes coming down, but then what's the rest of your day look like? So,
Yeah. And you
yeah.
have a 7-month-old. So, do you have any nieces or nephews, like somebody who doesn't like to brush their teeth, or you as a kid? Let's
I don't,
pretend,
but let's pretend. Let's do it.
yeah, let's pretend that you are you and I am your child in like 8 years. And I say, Mom, you want me to brush my teeth twice a day, right, Mom?
Yeah. And floss.
I have a really good idea, Mom.
What's your good idea?
I'm going to brush my teeth 14 times on Sunday, and then I'm good for the week.
Yeah, no, that's a really good analogy. Yeah, I like that.
I use that with clients all the time. It's very fun.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good one. So, in terms of coming down, I know you did a little exercise with us, and I know there's things like meditation that you kind of touched on. Like, what other tools do you think are really useful for stress management?
Movement. So we have good studies that exercise is as effective as Zoloft. And so we don't have the side effects there. Um, the nervous system thrives on movement and blood flow. And so just intuitively, when many of us were studying in college and we needed a break, we would go for a run, we'd go for a walk, we'd go play racquetball because intuitively knew that we needed to get the blood moving to get our nervous system to calm down. And so for a lot of people with pain and feeling really stressed out with work and their pain, et cetera, it's counterintuitive to think, oh, I should go move and exercise. However, movement is one of our key strategies. If we could only choose two, and we have many, it would be education and exercise as key strategies for pain. And both of those are key strategies for stress as well.
Yeah. And I appreciate that answer so much. And I imagine that there's a lot of people, I've seen it happen with my mom, that get into that cycle that you were kind of talking about, where it's like they're stressed, they're in pain, so they don't want to move. And then it gets harder to move the more that they don't move. And then, if they get a little bit sore from the movement or it's a little hard on their body, it's like a step forward, two steps back. So I can see why way back when we first started talking about movement, you're like, just do the dishes, just anything to just start to move your body.
Yeah. We
Yeah,
talk about a roundabout of pain, and all those things you're talking about: fear, avoidance, cycling, and what we're trying to do is find them an exit out of the roundabout. And it's different for each person, so that's why it's not a recipe. It's more of a each person approach.
Okay, before we go on to social connections, which I think is going to be really fascinating too, you said fear, and I would love for you to talk about how fear plays into pain.
Hugely. What we say is that the fear of pain is often worse than the fear itself. And it's
Worse
so,
than the pain itself, right?
yeah.
Okay,
So the fear of pain is often worse than the pain itself.
right. Okay.
And it's so hard to see people that are so afraid of movement. And it's also very empowering to them when they start to see the shift. So we talked a little bit about neuroplasticity, but we use a lot of brain map work and a lot of brain training to help their body experience pain in a different way. And oh shoot, what was I going to say about this? Hang on, it'll come to me. Fear. Yes. So I had a client once, and she had a problem in her mid back, and I was wanted to show her an exercise, and she's like, "I can't do that exercise." I said, "Okay, can you watch me do the exercise?" And she couldn't even watch me do the exercise. Her system was in such a state of threat and protection that her pain increased watching me. So we completely
Wow.
tabled it for a couple of months. And I said, "What do you think? Do you want to try and watch me do it?" And then she was able to watch me do it. So we can actually use outside influences to start to create safety in their nervous system. And another time I was working with a client, and she was laying on my table and she wanted to empty her dishwasher. So we just did a visualization, and we did it for maybe 2 minutes. And she's like, "I have to stop," because her foot pain got worse because she was imagining emptying her dishwasher. That is how powerful our thoughts in our brain is.
Wow.
So fear,
Wow.
fear is a huge piece of pain.
Is it always fear of the pain?
No, no,
What other
there's
kind of
so much
fear?
fear. It
Yeah.
could be fear of, so today I had a new client today, and he's afraid of falling. And he's only afraid of falling because all of these medical providers are asking him if he's fallen. He's in his 70s. And so he's also afraid of falling because he works with people in an assisted living. So that part of the population is going to have a higher percentage of falls. And I said, if we zoom out, right, you look at all the people in their 70s and 80s, the vast majority of them are not falling, except you're seeing more that do. And so he has a fear of falling based on his exposure and his environment. And now we can circle this back to now he has a belief that older people fall.
Yeah. That totally makes sense. And then another thing you said is avoidance. And getting them out of avoidance helps people get out of that cycle of pain. So talk to me a little bit about that too.
I would say avoidance and fear are kind of on the same continuum. This goes back to a little bit of some of the beliefs and the myths around pain. A lot of people believe that they can't do anything until they feel 100%. When the reality is, as they start to do something, this actually fosters and fuels their ability to feel better sooner. And so that avoidance that keeps us in that roundabout of pain. And one of the things that happens is then we start to go down the Dr. Google pathway. Dr. Google is never our friend. Then pain catastrophizing, which is, I love the word catastrophizing, but that's no fun when people are just absolutely afraid of everything. And then this turns into more avoidance. And then I call it the triple Ds: disuse, depression, and disability. And we need to find a way to get them to exit out of that path.
Is it I appreciate that what you said earlier was that you're open to working with people who are curious and open and they want to change, right? In order to get people off of this cycle, do they need to be curious and want to change? Like, if you have someone come in that's like, this is how it is, like, is there any hope for them to get off that cycle? And I'm really asking for my mother.
I'm so sad for you and your mom.
It's okay.
Sometimes it takes someone just asking some interesting questions.
Mm.
So, by your description, this little description I have, your mom has a very strong belief about her pain being related to the body structure. And sometimes we can just ask some questions if they're willing to have these questions asked. And we call it, in the coaching world, we call it develop discrepancy. So we just want to just find a little edge in. And we don't know what's going to happen. Now, the other thing is that sometimes it's just planting seeds. Say something to your mom that you've learned and all, because you have this amazing knowledge base, and you don't know what or when it might blossom and grow. And so I see a lot of clients. I don't know what the follow up is. And I had one guy, he's like, I can afford to see you for 2 hours. Saw him for 1 2 hour session. I didn't know if I helped him at all. Saw him socially like 3 or 4 years later. I said, hey, how are you doing? He goes, I'm 95% better. And I was like, oh, so we don't know, because each person is their own individual. And at the same time, someone like your mom might not be ready to go to a clinic, although there are some really great 5-minute videos that I could send you and you could send your audience that just give this beautiful overview of pain. I could do that. Sometimes that's a good place to start.
Yeah, but send them to me and I'll put them in the show notes.
I will. Yeah, I send them to people all the time.
Yeah, that's cool. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
So, let's get back to social connections, because I just saw that stat that loneliness is like smoking 15 cigarettes a day, right? That's all over Instagram these days. So, I have a feeling this is going to be an interesting one.
My favorite statistic on that, it's a meta-analysis. It's pretty old. It's from 2010. And they looked at 5-year mortality for different health and environmental exposures. And so if you were exposed to pollution, you had a 5% greater mortality. And then if you were exposed to obesity, I think alcohol was 25%, obesity was 35%, and social isolation, 45% greater likelihood of 5-year mortality. That
Wow.
blows my mind. Yeah.
Yeah. Especially in this post-pandemic world where everything is online and with social media and yeah. So, well, let's talk about that actually. I know quite a few people who get all of their interactions through social media and don't have a lot of face-to-face time with people. Like, does that count as social interaction, or is it really like you need to be in community?
I think it depends on the person. There are some people who absolutely thrived in COVID because they tend to have more of that introverted personality, and saying they no longer had the pressure to be socializing, at work or at, Friday night at happy hour. Um, I think you can get connection online. I think we have to do that in a different, I feel like we've connected pretty well today and we're online. Yeah.
Yeah,
So it
totally.
might be more fun. It might be different if we were in person in an actual coffee shop. And at the same time, if this is what's available to us, we still have the ability to make it work. That's when people are choosing to isolate, when they're only in that world of Dungeons and Dragons, or they're only in that world of, watching soap operas, whatever it is. It's when they're truly not getting any human contact. I think that's when it becomes a bigger problem.
Totally. So So, what kind of stats have you seen from helping people in all of these areas? In terms of chronic pain, it doesn't have to be like actual numbers, but like, do you have any success stories that you want to share? Or, yeah, just talk to me about that.
All right. So, success stories on social isolation and pain or
Just
health.
all of them, like have you seen a lot of people be able to get off their medication or be able to thrive without that surgery or to, reduce or even get rid of their chronic pain by helping bump up all of these little levels?
I hope that I've been successful because I'm still doing it all these years later. So I'll start there. One of my favorite client stories is she was a physician. That's a key part of the story. She
Mm.
was a physician and she came to me. She had seen many doctors, many neurologists, many scans, and they said absolutely positively she needed a nerve transposition, a nerve moving surgery. And so I was like, okay, what brings you here? And she's like, I just want to get into a good place so that I recover from the surgery well. I said, okay. I said, what if we were to accomplish something more? And she's like, doubt it. So this was 6 weeks before surgery. Well, she was so very curious and so invested in her health that she canceled her surgery.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And the part about her being a physician is that she realized in part of our journey together that the stress of her job was a big contributor to her pain. And so she actually made a career change.
Yeah. I mean,
Mm.
I believe that too so much. And this podcast also covers the spiritual component. And I think a lot of times pain can be messages from our body that we're not on the right path we're supposed to be on, or that we're in an environment that's toxic, or that we're in the relationship that's wrong for us. What are your thoughts on that?
I'm going to speak to you as a human and not as a pain science person here. But
Yeah.
yes, I believe that 100%. Um, I don't do a lot of work with chakras, but I have some exposure to it through other clinicians. And so, yeah, if I have a weird pain, I'll look it up. I'm like, what is the spiritual meaning of XYZ? And so it's always interesting to see what that possible connection is. We have to include all of it. So in the pain science world, we talk about this word biopsychosocial. It's biology, it's psychology, it's sociology, but there's some of us we want to add spirituality to that as well because we are complex humans and all of these systems are interacting together. So I think absolutely there's something to what you're saying. 100%.
Totally. And we're to add to everything you just said, like we're also just made up of energy, right? We're all energy. And there's so much more beyond this physical that maybe we don't even understand yet.
I listened to this podcast. It blew my mind. This guy said, we are so much energy and space that if you took up the actual matter of every single person on the planet and smushed it all down, it'd be the size of a basketball.
That's wild.
Isn't that wild? I thought that's
Yeah, it's so wild. And just to throw back to biology of belief, one of my favorite things that Bruce talks about in that book is that an atom isn't a tangible thing that you can feel and touch, right? It's a spinning vortex of just vibrating energy. And if you try and look at it under a microscope, you're just going to see a void because there is nothing to see. And everything in our universe is made up of atoms. Like we are made up of atoms. So yeah, I believe the basketball thing. It's so wild.
yeah, it's a little mind boggling. Like that's why I'm not an engineer because it hurts my head too much, but it's fascinating. It is fascinating.
Yeah. This has been such a pleasure. Is there anything you want to leave people with that maybe we didn't touch on, or that you just want to re-highlight again that you think listeners would really find helpful?
Mm. Well, I just on yesterday. Um, we're in a culture where people are very driven to do. And I tell him, I'm like, and I tell my clients, you can do anything. You can't do everything. And I think when we can give ourselves the gift of recognizing that we can't, nor do we have to do everything, this starts us on a different path to accomplishing what we want.
I love that you said that. I don't believe in coincidences. I was literally just I have a nanny watching my kid right now and she's amazing, but I was literally just talking to her about I'm starting to let go of the fact that I can't get all the work done on my to-do list every time I have childcare and which is not how I was. I was always that person that had to have it done, but now that I have a kid, it's like you have to relinquish. So I feel like I needed to hear that. So thank you.
You're
I,
welcome.
I am sure listeners just want to know how to connect with you, how to work with you, where to find you. So if you would please share.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. The best place to find me is email, which is jen at iriseforme.com, IRISE. And then, well, it's right there. For me.com. And then I have two websites. My first website is 180therapyandwellness.com. That is where more of the physical therapy and pain science is housed. And then in my other website, it's iriseforme.com. This is where I have the mental fitness work and coaching. And I have a 6-month pain coaching program. And then we didn't talk about it, but I use all of these strategies to help people navigate divorce as well.
Ooh, yeah. I realized like in our notes that there was something about relationships, but I didn't know that you focused on that specifically. So, yeah. I mean, and I'm sure that these tools that you teach can be applied to any huge life change or big stressor in someone's life, whether it's grief or job loss or, dealing with illness beyond pain. So, even if you're not in chronic pain or going through a divorce, I think you can find a lot of just wealth of information by checking out Jen's website. So go check them out.
Thank you.
Jen, this has been awesome. I appreciate you so much. Thank you so much for coming on. If you're listening, send this to someone you think it would resonate with. Never underestimate the power of planting a seed. Like, comment, share, subscribe, and I will see you all next week. Have a beautiful rest of your day.